Hi, my name is Shanna Young. I am a third-year medical student at UBC. Today is just going to be like a Q&A. The first question is, what were your biggest challenges during undergrad and how did you overcome them? I think for me, I got really burned out when I was in second year. In first term, I was really overwhelmed by the courses. I was taking 6 courses and 2 labs, I think. I was also in like leadership of clubs. I was also doing research. I think I was really busy like social life wise. How did I overcome it? I think I really was honest with myself and realized that I had taken on way too much and that I didn't need to have every single thing to get to medical school. And so then I cut down. It was really hard at first to admit to myself that I couldn't do everything that I wish I could do, which is do a bajillion extracurriculars and take on all these courses. I wasn't like super happy with the major that I was in, and that's when I completely switched my major to something that made me more happy. In summary, that was like changing my major. I dropped a class that had a lecture and a lab, so I went down by 1 lab and 1 lecture, and that was a lot more manageable. I didn't like to admit that to myself, but I am so glad I did. Instead of forcefully sticking it out and being overwhelmed and just kind of going on a downward slope the rest of the semester. So I would definitely recommend to any undergrad in a similar situation is to check in with yourself when you're feeling busy and overwhelmed. It might not just be like, I think we tend to like blame ourselves, like, oh, I don't have good enough studying, maybe I'm not studying like well enough, I'm not handling my time well enough. Sometimes even if you're at peak performance level, there is a point in your workload when you just have way too much and you just can't handle it. So definitely would encourage you to figure that out. Other challenges in undergrad, I think for me, I honestly don't think like the challenging parts of undergrad or the journey to medical school will ever really be like courses that are difficult, but more of like when things in your personal life happen. So you have conflict with people in your life, and then you're still trying to like maintain balance and stuff like that. That's like definitely, I think, for being in the pre-med journey or in the medical student journey. So just learning to navigate conflicts with people that have seniority over you, people that you might have leadership over. So question number 2 was, did you have lots of time to explore different disciplines and specialization in undergrad? For example, I'm unsure of what career path I want to go in. Emerge, surgery, pathology, cardiology, etc. So actually, I would not encourage people in undergrad to have a particular medical specialty in mind. Like, I think that is not a good idea. I think you should just know that you want to do medicine and then make sure that within medicine there are multiple disciplines that you like. So I guess for example, like say if whoever asked this question is interested in emerge, surgery, pathology, and cardiology, then I would say like, okay, like just knowing the fact that you like those 4 things is going to be really helpful for you. Knowing that going into medical school there are multiple different options that will make you happy. For example, I would say if someone was only dead set on being like a pediatric cardiothoracic surgeon, and that's the only thing you think would make you happy going into medical school, then I might think a little bit more carefully whether or not medical school is the right place for you, and you got to make sure you're going to be happy even if you don't end up in that exact specialty. I don't think undergrad is a good time to be exploring your medical specialties. Number 1, there are good ways for you to explore that, and number 2, I think you don't really know what you want that early in the game. Even as someone who's a medical student and I'm about to start clerkship in 2 weeks, I don't really think being in the first few years of medical school really tells you exactly what like specialty you want to do either. I think the only way for you to really get a feel of that is to go through like clerkship and beyond and just actually spend like 6 weeks in psychiatry, spend 6 weeks in surgery, and the whole day-to-day life, not just like one glamorous day of like shadowing from 8 to 5, not just 5 hours. Like I want, like the best thing you can do for yourself is like do you you love surgery, but do you love waking up at 5:30 and then getting home at 5:38 and kind of like you're okay with that lifestyle, not just for 1 week but for an entire 6 weeks. And then like for you to give it, it's still not accurate representation of doing this your whole life, but it will be a little closer to, will I be able to do this your whole life? Why I also don't encourage you to pick in undergrad is I think a lot of people change drastically over the course of their undergrad. And you change a lot over the course of your medical school journey, like just the passing of time and growing older, and your priorities might change, but also you realize a lot about yourself, and you grow. Like I say, like I think I'm a completely different person than I am when I was an undergrad. I'm a completely different person than I was when I started medical school. I'm, now going to third year, I think I'm a completely different person than I was when I started second year of medical school. What might be the perfect fit for you at the very, in third year of undergrad, it might not be actually what is the best fit for you, partway through medical school or at the end of medical school. So just like keep it in mind that you are bound to change to some extent. Like I still find the specialty that I kind of had an interest in when I was an undergrad and beginning of medical school is still something that I am still highly interested in, and I think that will go for a lot of people, that like some of the things they liked will still be the things they like. But I will say, being in medical school and learning about fields that I had no idea existed even at the beginning of medical school showed me that there's a lot of other careers I think would make me equally as happy, or maybe not perfectly so, but still like very happy, and like I just felt like my eyes are opened a lot. And yeah, so anyways, sure, you have a lot of so basically I'm not sure what this question means by did you have lots of time to explore different disciplines and specialization in undergrad. I mean, there is lots of time to explore different medical specialties. Like if this question meant like do I have to know, like definitely you don't have to know. You have lots of time from undergrad till CARMS, to like aka like the final year of medical school. You have plenty of time, many years for yourself to figure it out, so like don't feel rushed about figuring out. But I definitely wouldn't say like in undergrad, like there is no, like don't bother trying to like figure out your medical specialty in undergrad at this time. Like there's better ways to use your time, I think. Question 3, apart from GPA and MCAT, what emphasis is there on extracurriculars, namely clubs, community involvement, volunteering, and research? I think extracurriculars are really important. So I am not part of the UBC admissions committee, and I don't know what happens, so I'm only speaking from experience. And I also may say things that are inaccurate, so always verify your sources and listen to multiple people. But at least at UBC, I believe the first part of getting from your application to your interviews is like 50% based on your extracurriculars. So half of it's like your grades, and then the other half is like what you do. And then they still continue to factor really heavily what your extracurriculars are. 50%, which is a lot. At that stage, you're not even thinking about things like reference letters or the MCAT. I think because your extracurriculars can show a lot about you. They can show that you have a certain passion, they can show dedication, they can show leadership skills. Basically, they can show your ability to carry things through. They can show you've had experience in multiple with different populations. But not only does it look good on your application, I personally feel like extracurriculars are just so important to grow you as a person. All these things like clubs and community involvement, these teach you what you're passionate in. Having experiences in clubs and leadership will teach you to be a better leader. Research teaches you a lot about patience, for sure, working in an interdisciplinary team. So I do think extracurriculars are really important. I think I have a video that I did with one of the incoming medical students. I think it's literally called Extracurriculars for Med School, and some of the things I talk about is like these are some really good big pillars, like clubs, community involvement, volunteering, research. I think I would encourage everyone to try out, because I think if you're missing one of those, like you might be missing some of these like interesting experiences and skills that you can gain from any of those. But none of these are by any means like mandatory. Like I think it'd be ideal for you to hit all these up if they are things that like speak to you, but there's no exact like if you do this, this, and this, it'll like help you get in. It's like some combination of this is usually, I think if I were to pick extracurriculars, I would go back and think about your passion. So if you are really passionate about empowering women, and you sought out all these volunteering opportunities in maybe in a women's shelter, crisis line, and then you were volunteering in that setting, and then you were part of a club that fundraised for that cause, or You provide mentorship maybe as an undergrad to high school students, and then your research could be related, or it could just be something totally different. Like you could be doing something kind of related, so maybe like research related to like cancers in the female reproductive tract or with pregnant women, but it could just be like a totally different research. So like, you know, it could be connected just because that's like naturally what you're drawn to, or it can be like not connected at all and you just decide to diversify your experiences. So like I think there's a lot of ways to go about doing it, and I don't think I can tell you what the best one is, but I personally liked going by like a little bit more organic in that like I really like this, so I'm just gonna keep natural, and I like, so then once you find one thing you're interested in, you keep doing it, you'll start to find more like related ways. Like, you know, you volunteer with this organization, then you hear about another one that you'd love to get involved in, whether or not it's a leadership role or a volunteer role, and then because you get really like interested in this, at least for me, I was also doing related research, and so like all of my stuff kind of unintentionally became like all connected to each other just because I was just so interested in this particular area. I wouldn't say I like, you know, came like deciding like I'm going to be like this perfect like package of everything related. It just kind of, it happens quite organically. And then there's also just like some things I did that were just like completely unrelated, and I just thought they were fun, and they're kind of like those like hobby type things. Number 4, what's the best way to stand out at admissions? I don't know, but I think what I just said earlier about extracurriculars and just kind of picking your passion, like picking something, general themes or causes that you're really passionate about, and then going from there instead of thinking like I need to do research and I'm going to do like, if you do everything that looks like you're doing everything for the sake of the application, I think it probably doesn't come across as well. It looks very like fake and like contrived. I think you're better off like, I think it really just shows when you did it. And I think another way is really to show good, you know, quality of involvement, depth, and like length and commitment. But I think you get a lot of your experience for yourself, and you are able to commit to something long term. So we're not talking like you're doing, you know, you volunteer this thing for one day, another day. I think you totally should. I totally did a whole bunch of those just because like those were interesting and like cool. I don't think any of those made it to my actual medical school application. I think you should do them for the sake of doing them, but for your like, you know, application, like instead of just doing things for like one day, 1 week, 1 month even, I would probably try to do them for like a few months, an entire semester, an entire school year. Ideally, like you could do it for a couple years, like your whole undergrad. I think that's like a better way to go about doing things, and you can accumulate more like experience and leadership from doing that more long term. So like that, and then also like when you're doing something, don't just like do it in a like super detached way, if that makes sense. Like volunteering at a senior home, there is a big difference between punching in your card at the, you know, volunteering for the seniors, and then you're just kind of like not doing much and not engaging, and you're just kind of trying to do as little as you can during your shift. And there's a thing about like being really proactive and seeking out opportunities to learn and to really engage with the seniors and contribute, you know, any unique skills that you have. So maybe you speak a language and you really connect with someone who, you know, a senior in there who has been craving, you know, a conversation in their own language, or you happen to play a unique game like Scrabble or cribbage or something that not everyone knows how to play, and you are able to bring that light to your seniors' lives. So like you are getting a lot out of it, I think, and then it probably shows that the, you know, the person, the patient you're working with is going to feel really good, and then hopefully that feeds back well to your volunteer supervisor. That can lead to a better letter and committing better and adding better quality to what you do. I think it shines. One example, I'm not just saying for your volunteering interview, I'm like talking about this for like every single thing. Like you're volunteering in a club, like you don't have to become the club president of every club. Like not everyone should be the club president of a club, because like we can't all be presidents, and not everyone needs to be a leader like all the time. But I mean, like if you're in that club and you're like the finance coordinator, like be impeccable about your job, like be really good at the finances and maybe suggest ways that they can save money, or you know, in charge of events, like take pride in your events and like do a good job. And I find that like once you do a good job and your club grows, and or like your event managed to touch a lot of people, and then like it becomes more famous, and like you know, like, and then when you have more impact, you're able to like write about the bigger impact you had. If I were to say like one big takeaway, the best way to like to get a good thing out of your experience that probably leads to accomplishments that make you stand out in admissions compared next to someone of went through the motions is to actually commit, actually have a good time, actually be as committed and as helpful as you can to whatever organization you're part of and whatever cause you're part of. What is the approximate timeline for preparing to medical school? When should we start taking the MCAT? When do we start writing our application? As soon as you have an idea that you are pretty committed to the idea of going, I would plan out your like long-term timeline. So ideally, if you're in first year, think about like, if you know you want to go to medical, say in first year, or by second year, then think about which schools you're most likely to apply to for medical school. So if you're from Ontario, or you're from Alberta, or from BC, like look at the school, your in-province school, for example, or for example, like for me, I'm from BC, so I looked up UBC's admissions, but I also looked up like Toronto and I think Calgary and like some of the schools like I kind of was interested in, and then like what kind of course requirements they have. Make sure you're like fitting in your classes appropriately into your major, so that you're going to get those classes in time for the time you want to apply. And so starting to study for the MCAT. So I did the MCAT this summer after my second year of undergrad. I started studying at the end of May, or I think around like May 20 something. And then I took the test on July 28th. That's about 2.5 months. That's my personal recommendation. I really strongly recommend that to pretty much anyone who asks me like, when should I take the MCAT? How long should I study for the MCAT? Again, to each his own, but I personally didn't feel like studying any longer for the MCAT. I felt like for me that would have been like a waste of time, honestly. The more time I give myself, I feel like the less I might be tempted to be less focused with my studying, but when I'm like given like a nice time crunch, then I like really get on it and I really study. And I also like felt like I couldn't study, like take the test any later than July 28th because I wanted to start working on my application. So to answer when should we start working on writing our application, so I literally took the MCAT on July 28th, and then on July 29th I met up with my friend to start working on our applications, and I just did that all the way until the application date, which in my year was September 15th for UBC, and then it was August 1st for all the Ontario schools. And I think Calgary's was also due on October 1st, so just keeping that in mind, you do have to spend your summer doing it because these applications are due really early in the year, which I think is quite different from grad school applications, which are due later in the year. So plan accordingly. If you were planning to apply to medical school in your 4th year of medical school, or you were planning to like take a gap year, then you can take the MCAT on a later date. So for gap year before medical school, Kay Young shared her experience that she knew she wanted to take a gap year, so she took the MCAT the year after she graduated. So that's one option. So that way she didn't have to, like for example I spent basically half of the summer just like intensely studying, and then writing the application she was able to do at a more relaxed pace. What were your stats, GPA, MCAT, and extracurriculars? Quite average for GPA and MCAT. I think I was overstressed about my grades, and like I felt like I had to study all the time in undergrad, and I had to have a perfect GPA, and I thought like some of these like lower grades would hinder me, but it turns out it was okay, so maybe don't stress as much as I did. I was really passionate about research. I did quite a bit of volunteering, I worked, and I was involved in student club. 7. What was your most impactful clinical experience, and how did you get that opportunity? I actually found a clinical job off Craigslist. It was involved in caring for someone with a chronic condition, and that was really interesting to see the impact of a chronic condition on a person's health, on their mental well-being, on their ability to do their job, and a dynamic with other people. And it was just like a very, so that was like very interesting, but also like logistically it was helpful for me to like question and examine whether or not I was okay with some of the things that it comes with healthcare. So for me that was literally cleaning up someone's feces. There's a lot of like, there's a glamour side of medicine, which you're figuring stuff out, they're doing surgery and stuff, but there's also like the day-to-day experience of medicine. I think you gotta be okay with bodily fluids. Oh yeah, I guess I had another clinical experience, so that was very interesting. I did a lot of volunteering like related to like first aid, so definitely a lot of blood, a lot of vomit. You work with some patients that are very intoxicated, so you get yelled at a lot. I think that is part of some very real healthcare experience right there, and you have to like know for yourself if that's acceptable to you. So, and also like knowing this, like the highlights of that outweigh any of the things that are not so fun for yourself. I think it takes a certain, like some personalities are okay with it, some are not. did an interview with a friend who decided to go to grad school, so this is where we would disagree on like just like principles and values. Like I personally love the aspect of helping people, like when people have like a need or like they ask you to do something, I like to like fill that in. But as my friend who decided to pursue grad school, she said she doesn't like that, but instead she likes to self-initiate her tasks. So I think it's like coming up with that distinction for yourself. Like would you rather like come up and like kind of never have to like take orders from anyone, like because in a way being in medicine is a lot of taking orders and catering to other people's needs, and I think that's the most fulfilling thing I can do with my life. But I think you need to know that for yourself. So I would like look out for some clinical experiences that can help you explore that. What is the best way to understand what you learn? I feel like I study for hours, but I still do average. I personally feel like even with the best study strategies, you need to be studying for hours. There is no magic bullet, and if you're studying for hours and you're already getting good grades, like I think you're already doing a good job. I think where this can come for problems, we sometimes get a perception that other people are not studying that much. They're just breezing, they're just dropping in, and they only study like 2 hours, and like I don't really know why people feel a need to be lying about the fact, oh, I didn't study for the test, and like you know, they do amazing and clearly they studied. I think most people put in a lot of time to do well. I don't think anyone ever does well, like, you know, with a few exceptions, but pretty much most people put in a lot of work and a lot of hours of studying in order to do well. There is like no shortcuts. One thing that I think is never good to do is to just like continuously reread notes or slides and not really have any processing in between. I also personally, I like to like write stuff or like reword them and take, you know, more concise notes or on, for example, and I know you can never resell a book after you've done this, but I will literally like write in it, highlight it, maybe like take shorter notes on it depending on what the book is, but like you gotta engage with that text and like ruin it. I don't know. Try to find some resources that have some practice questions for you. So for like if you are taking OChem, they usually provide you lots of questions, math, physics, these are all stats, like all these classes are really great about providing a ton of practice questions, both from your lectures but also like supplementals. They might like provide you with like practice sets, so I love doing all of those. I think those really help you. If your question is help you understand what you learned, that definitely really helps. It helps you realize what you don't understand so that you can go patch that up, like by like, you know, going back in those notes and like covering those like specific things. But I think if you can find like, if you want to find like extra practice questions, if you are able to do that. Another way to understand what you learn is to try to do as much like active recall as you can. So for me, I've always been like really big on flashcards. I think when I was in undergrad I used Quizlet a lot, and now that I'm in medical school I use Anki a lot, but they're both free programs, and basically like you can like make your own flashcards, and I think that's like really helpful because like it's really and I think when I was in first year of school, like this was a bit too slow and I wouldn't recommend it, but that was, you know, I didn't have a laptop when I was in first year of medical school, so I couldn't like make digital notes, to be honest. What I did is I would take a piece of paper, I would like fold it, and I would like basically make flashcards, but like with a piece of paper, because I didn't have that many flashcards, but like writing like all the like the terms and then like what it was on the other side, so you could do that as like a a cheap way, I guess, of making flashcards. So like you like write it and like just like basically like testing yourself. I also think I like did a lot of like, it was like or you could just like make outlines. I don't make outlines that I ever refer back to. So like I only like, for example, if I'm like reading this case in like in obstetrics and it's about like normal delivery of a baby, then I might like take a piece of paper and then just like write it out and like make a diagram so it's just like easy to understand. And I just don't, I never refer to it. I just, once I feel like it's like I drew it out and I've like made everything in a way that's understandable and I kind of burn it into my brain, then I just throw out the piece of paper. And I think like just like the act of writing it out is really helpful. So like not like, I feel like when I see people say like, when I don't mean like writing out, I don't mean like rewriting, like, you know, normal progression of, you know, second stage of labor should be a max of 2 hours or 3 hours depending if they're multi-pairs or nullipairs. You don't just like write that like line a few more times, like that's not helpful to you, but like, you know, drawing like symbols and like flows and like if you can make it into like a chart, like diagram form, that like converting like plain text into like a diagram form that might be easier to remember is really helpful ways to study. What should people do in first and second year to prepare for medical school? Look into your courses that your medical school of choice is looking for. If you're planning to take the MCAT soon, I would also take all the classes that the MCAT tests. So for example, I think what I did is the MCAT, I would take physics. I would take 2 physics. I would take 2 chemistries. I take O chemistry, take biochemistry, sociology, psychology. Like take all of it if you can fit it in to your class, so that you basically would like ease your load when you're studying for the MCAT. Yeah, do that. And then I personally would take more statistics. I took only 1 semester statistics. I totally would have taken more statistics. School is to start getting involved in extracurriculars early, to start figuring out what you like, and oh shoot, well, my microphone is broken, but that's okay. I'll just hold it. What should students do in first year to prepare for medical school? I think learn how to just spend first year learning how to learn. Like, you don't want to like tank your GPA. I think getting like, try not to tank your GPA in first year trying to get like unless you're like you're very confident in your study skills, which I wasn't. So in first, like especially in first term, I would just be patient with yourself and really focus in on learning how to study, because it can be a really big adjustment coming in from high school. So so I would do that, just like play around. So maybe figure out if flashcards are your thing, or you know, there's you know, that's the way I study, but maybe there's some other ways to study. I think you don't have to worry about getting into research that early. I know like some people panic about that, but really you probably might be better off getting into research later on in your undergrad career, if that's something that interests you, just because you don't really know a lot when you're in first year. But you could still apply to be a research assistant somewhere. Just like don't expect people to like hand you a project at that stage, because I think people have a good gauge of like what is and what isn't. Really think about, especially in first year, think about what major you want, so you can plan your courses accordingly. So some majors you're going to require to meet this class, and if you don't have that class, you are not eligible to be in that major. So I would look into that and make sure you know what you have to do, and if there's any requirements to, you know, get in and do that. Just like think ahead, plan ahead for your major, plan ahead for your graduation requirements. I think that's really important. Like you should have some kind of running like spreadsheet, or I think I actually did it in pencil, but like just know what classes you plan to take in first year, in second year, third year, fourth year, and just like be very meticulous about that. And like even to the point, I would go on our course calendar and see like when they're available, because usually most classes are available around the same time. I would like plan that out so you like know, in case you might actually realize that a class you need to graduate or you need to get into medical school, you thought you could take it in third year, actually you'd be better off taking it first year, or taking it in second year or in summer school. Those are things that you should know about and you'll deal with earlier. I would probably try not to stress about getting into medical school so early, like, you know, early in your undergrad, like, but like try to keep it in mind. And like, yeah, I feel like I'm telling you to plan ahead, but I'm also telling you not to stress at all. I think in first and second year, this is kind of your last chance to back out, you know, before you're in medical school. This is your last chance to back out, so really take the time to explore if there's any other career that would make you happier, and then so that you just kind of have like no regrets. So for example, I really love research, and I was considering whether or not maybe I should do a PhD instead and then just go into the academia research route. So like maybe like look into that, look into like maybe you can have some chats with someone who does that, whatever, like, and that could be something different for you. So one of my classmates that I interviewed, I forget, I think her video that's coming out is called Business Before Med School, or I left my job in business for med school. Anyways, something like that. But for her, she just was at when she was like in undergrad, or at the very end of undergrad, she wanted to go to med school, but she also had always had a long running interest in business. So she decided to go do a master's and then subsequently work in a fusion of business and science industry, and she said she really appreciated doing that because now that she's in medicine she has like no regrets, like no what ifs, was the other career a better option, like she went and like tested that first. I think medicine is a pretty high commitment career. I wouldn't say like there's no takebacks, but I think you'd be better off exploring something just to make sure that would make you happier before you go through the entire like 9 yards of writing the MCAT and applying to medical school, only to find out that you don't really like it. So basically, really, yeah, like rule out other things that might be, or rule out careers that are similar. Like for example, I think people like other healthcare experiences like pharmacy, dentistry, being a vet, these are all like careers that are very similar, and just like make sure like, you know, the one you actually want to do is like medicine, and then definitely keep your motivation up by trying to find ways that maybe get you interacting with patients or with healthcare providers in some way that keeps you motivated to be studying, doing the MCAT and all that. So that would be my answers to these 9 questions on the pre-med journey. Hopefully that was helpful. So anyways, I'm Shanna. I'm a 3rd year medical student at UBC, and let me know if there are any further questions that you would like me to answer.